Well, hi everybody. Welcome back to Cosmic Owl Astrology. Louise Eddington. I'm really excited today to have Rosie Finn with me. I'm probably going to pepper her with lots of questions. But Rosie wrote this book, Persephone's Revolution. And those of you that know my work know I talk about the Persephone, Demeter, Hades myth a lot. But this is Pluto's path to the end of empire. And again, if you followed my work, you know that I think we're really at the end of empire in a bigger way than we've ever been before. Would you kind of
Yes,
agree? Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so the book really is about a very detailed research. You must have spent so much time on it. But first, let tell people more about you, Rosie.
Well, I've been an astrologist since 1996, Western. I've also been studying Vedic for the last 15 years. And I started writing the book around 2002, 2003 in that time period, and noticed Pluto going out of bounds and how much that cycle of Pluto going out of bounds to the north, to the south, and I can talk more about what that means in a minute, but I noticed a pattern in history, and then I just started studying history for the last 20 years. So to be able to write the book with some kind of authority and way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it goes into a lot. And full disclosure, I have ADD, so
Yeah.
some of the history I've skimmed over because I do know a lot of history as well. But. So, but the reason why it's prescient now is because I'll let you talk about.
Because in the fall of 2025 was Pluto went out of bounds. So shall I just talk about the cycle itself?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Pluto is a 248-year cycle, as I'm sure your viewers are probably aware. And Declination is how far north or south of the equatorial plane you extend the equator out. When a planet goes beyond 23 and a half degrees, it goes out of bounds. And I think you've been talking about the other planets out of bounds. Mars was out of
mm,
bounds recently. And so Pluto goes out of bounds twice within its cycle to the north and to the south. And when it goes out of bounds to the north, that is when empires expand. That's when dictators take over. And that was the 1940s of the current cycle we're in. And then when Pluto goes out of bounds to the south, it's a time of revolutions, it's a time of reformations, it's a time of awakenings. There's a different kind of disillusionment that happens, but also more power to the people. So the people lose power when Pluto goes out of bounds to the north, and they gain power when Pluto goes out of bounds to the south. And in 2025, Pluto went out of bounds for the first time south in this current cycle.
and it
And
and it will be doing so every year till 2032, right? Is that
2035, actually.
oh
So
2035? Sorry, yeah.
yes, so it'll be going out of bounds from August to December every
Mm,
year, and then just less in 2035. The
hmm.
peak of it, the most intense, is 2029, 2030.
Yeah, yeah.
And and the other extraordinary thing is that because of the tilt and precession and a lot of other things that we're looking at, Aquarian age and the galactic alignments, due to the Earth's tilt changing, this is the last time Pluto goes out of bounds.
Mm,
So in the next cycle for thousands of years. So this is also extraordinary for a few reasons. One, that it's not out of bounds all the way each year. Another is that it's the last time. And when we
mm.
see such extraordinary wars and upsets, and we see the pattern of this cycle, to think that this isn't happening again, I think this must be in a very extraordinary time. And we know it,
Mm.
right? We're,
We
we're
do,
living in
yeah.
it. We're watching it. Um, how
I mean,
quick.
I've also interviewed Bibu Dev Misri on here, who wrote the Yuga Shift book,
Oh, yes.
and so
Yeah.
even all those cosmologies say that we're at the end of the Kali Yuga. We're
Yeah.
all these, we're at the turning of the great ages. We're not really just like at the end of an age. So yeah.
Yeah.
How lucky to be born now, right? So I know my listeners would love to know that these periods before where Pluto's gone out of bounds to the south, clearly we're at the start of it, and it doesn't feel like the people are rising up yet, apart from in Iran, of course, maybe there. So, how have these periods generally unfolded and how long have they usually lasted? So this one's 10 years and yeah.
Usually they're longer. Pluto
Mm,
is going out of bounds for longer periods of time, so usually 20, 25 years. And usually it was out of bounds the entire time.
mm,
Uh, and it usually starts with kind of crazy dictators trying to take over. We see kind of bloodshed at the beginning of them.
mm.
And that's, I mean, if you read
Well, we're
history, that's
seeing it,
all of
aren't
it.
we? So, yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Um, so a couple of examples are during the Roman Empire. Augustus Caesar built the empire, empire building when Pluto was out of bounds to the north, out of bounds to the south. They had kind of a series of kind of crazy dictators, emperors. They had Caligula, then Claudius, which was kind of a little more measured, and then Nero. We're in the time of Nero,
Mm,
and he kind of went off the rails. And then they had a year of four emperors. And then they had Vespasian who came in and focused on infrastructure and
mm,
support. Uh, Justinian, when he was starting his reign in the Byzantine Empire time, he, there was a big, there was a lot of smaller kind of uprisings and upsets that were happening, and he saw kind of the writing on the wall. He did a huge massacre, the Nika Rebellion, where he corralled a group of people into the Colosseum and killed them all.
mm,
And and then he realized that this was going to continue unless he made changes. So he restructured the government there.
mm,
Um, Another Roman Empire time period was Diocletian, who came in and massacred so many Christians. He came in with this policy, kind of like Trump, let's kick out the immigrants, let's like kick
mm,
out the Christians, like kill them all. And then Constantine came in and just saw this isn't working. So he created the Nicene Council and really
mm,
freedom of religion for a period of time. So that kind of sense of a leader coming in. Now, I don't think that we're going to be, I mean, the Roman Empire was a really long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
And um, so I think the most recent Pluto out of bounds to the south was started around 1775, so the beginning of the American Revolution into 1796. So it included the French Revolution. And
Mm,
so this revolutionary uprising, and I love that I think Ken Burns' documentary coming out has us educating ourselves more about this time period that exactly correlates with the time we're in.
mm,
So the beginning is kind of this unsettled energy that's going
mhm,
on right now. There's a sense of something changing. Now, in this one, it's happening so fast.
mhm,
Um, I think people will start uprising. I think that
mhm,
due to other planetary things that are correlating with this, including Saturn, Neptune conjunction, I think we're kind of waiting for that. We need the new energy
mhm,
to come in. We need to have a whole different kind of idea for how to go through this time period. I think there's a lot of people talking about we need a new conversation. We need a
mhm.
new government. I think
A new
having that,
constitution. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
Mhm,
there's going to be an opportunity for it.
mm,
And I think the transits of this year
mhm,
support us having really brand new ideas in
mm,
February, when those the eclipses happen and that conjunction at 0 degrees Aries of Neptune.
mm.
And
That
then
for
we get into August and we
mm,
have um, Jupiter going through in Leo, expanding
mhm,
things. We have Mars out of bounds. We have Pluto going out of bounds. And that looks like a very volatile time, but I think we need that volatility, that kind of heat under us.
yeah, to wake us up really. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And particularly the moment we're in right now till well, just for another month, that eclipse in February is pretty big, I think, to be honest. I kind of feel because all the planets, personal planets, that is, sorry, are under the beams of the sun, and we can't see them. They're kind of energies inaccessible to us for quite some time. But um, Venus, while this all happens, they all meet Pluto, right? So, again, and on the eclipse, on that,
Mhm.
have you that on that day, Venus emerges from her underworld, conjunct
Mm.
the North Node on the eclipse,
Okay.
and that's eight, of course, Pisces on the North Node. And then later, on another event, I think it's on the full moon eclipse, Mercury will be at eight Pisces, and then with the North Node. But so that all these things are kind of coming together, as well as all these outer planets changing signs. Have you looked at any of the newly discovered dwarf planets?
Uh, like Haumea, Maki
Mm,
Maki, those are or newer
yeah,
ones.
yeah.
Yes,
Halmea particularly. Yeah, yeah.
yes, I have. And one of
Mm,
the things that, about those planets, of course, those
mm,
planets go out of bounds also.
mm,
Um, they're tilted at the same kind of direction as Pluto. So there's this
mm,
kind of tilted field with the Kuiper Belt, and the more they
mhm,
kind of discover, it seems like the more evidence of that tilt.
mm.
Um,
The only reason I ask is also on that eclipse, Pluto and Haumea have the ninth of 13 exact squares this decade, because I tracked those.
okay, wow. And
For Aquarius, and their last square in 2028 is at 6 Aquarius Scorpio. And there's an astrologer, Alan Clay in New Zealand. He talks about how Maya being of the nature of Pluto. She's regeneration. So all these things kind of just are adding up. So even I'll take your opinion on it. Even going back, I think we can look at the history, but and the Roman Empire and things, but it's still nothing like where we're at right now, right? So,
right, right. I mean, if we look at just so one of the things they track is also Pluto at 0 degrees declination.
mm,
So when it crosses the equatorial plane, so the beginning of the cycle seems to be, to me, from just looking at the history,
mm,
it was in the 1860s. And when we look at kind of what was happening then, I mean, we're in a radically different world than ever
mm,
before. We have billions more people on the planet. We have
mm,
this accelerated kind of technology
mm,
that's going on that started in the 1860s, really.
mm,
So, yeah, we're in a totally unprecedented time.
mm,
And I think Pluto going out of bounds so quickly for
mm.
such intense time periods is part of it. It's one piece of it.
Yeah, but I think it's a big part, though. The fact that it doesn't go out of bounds again for thousands of years it's just, I wonder, if we had ephemeris for 26,000 years ago, if the same similar thing happened then, who knows?
I know I wasn't able to get my hands on it an
I
ephemeris
don't.
back
I've looked. I don't think there are any. Let alone when we're aware that they're there, Pluto, and in our consciousness. So all
then.
these newly discovered planets, that makes a difference too.
True. I mean, this is the
To,
first cycle we determined,
mhm,
found Pluto in a way.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
but then Rosie has a Substack blog as well called the same name. So it's Persephone's Revolution. So I signed up for that as well. And I love that you, like me, kind of tie in some other things too. And so you did a blog called Paradigm Shift, which we're in hugely. So,
Mhm.
and Three Eye Atlas, I think this is part of it as well because didn't Three Eye Atlas come closest to Earth yet while Pluto was out of bounds? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
the beginning. Yeah. and then closest to Earth on December the 19th on the Sag new moon, which was on my ascendant on the galactic center. So, I've been tracking it a bit as well, but um, you have made some. I love how we kind of all bring these kind of extra pieces together, and I think it's connected as well to the Pluto out of bounds, so it's worth talking about.
Mhm.
So, Three Eye Atlas was first seen on July the 1st in Sagittarius A, incidentally, near the galactic center. So it's so it's so
Yes.
Sagittarian, this thing, right? So some people have said three eye means third eye, but I had not noticed that, and I knew these dates because I watched a geophysicist, Stefan Burns. So Pluto moved out of bounds, eclipse energy began all in October at the end of October, but then Three Eye Atlas passed Mars on October the 3rd, and Mars was at what you call the justice point. Did you name that, by the way?
Yeah.
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 And I immediately perked up when I read this. So because my Venus is at 7 Scorpio, which
Yeah.
is the justice point. And then when Three Eye Atlas was closest to the Sun on October the 29th, the Sun was at the justice point. And then
Mm.
when Three Eye Atlas reappeared from the brightness of the Sun on November the 11th, I was having my Venus return at 7 Scorpio again. And again, it's those personal planets, like I mentioned, the personal planets right now being all under the beams of the Sun. So I know we don't really know what Three Eye Atlas is bringing us, but the fact it kind of came in or closest to us while Pluto was out of bounds, all these other kind of, they're not coincidences at all, I don't think. Do you
Yeah.
think that really?
No, I agree. There's just something bigger going on than we can see, right?
Mm,
There's some ineffable aspect to what's happening.
mm,
We get to be present for.
mm,
And yes, our us being able to detect and see this other celestial body coming
mm,
into our solar system so close to us
mhm,
to uh, kind of like the star that just says something's happening, pay attention,
mm,
right?
mm,
I think the other thing that to be that I'm thinking about is how much in this current cycle people have been meditating and doing
mm,
therapy and these healing practices that have become very mainstream.
mhm,
So that even though we didn't like, I mean, there were demonstrations and uprisings that were happening, and certainly a lot was going on when all of that was happening, Gaza and with
mm,
things that were happening in the world, where there was that kind of deep, uncertain feeling
mm,
that is continuing. It feels like now it's like watching them try and hold on to power and
mm,
continue to grasp and grasp and grasp power. And when Pluto goes out of bounds, we have this eye-opening, like, okay, we can claim our power kind of time.
mm,
And I think that uh, Three Eye Atlas was, that our awareness of it and our tuning
mm,
into it. And I feel like hearing David Clemens talk about, like, hearing the scientists start talking about spiritual things, that like there's
yes.
something that's coming back around, and
Mm,
our nervous systems and our beings are kind of digesting this at this moment
mm,
because maybe we're not planning on having it be a kind of revolution that we've ever had before. We're not going
mm,
to like rise up violently. We're doing it maybe in our consciousness more. And I think that
mm.
that star is maybe a portent of that.
I actually read an article the other day, and not astrology at all, but they actually said we're in World War III, but it's a war for our consciousness or our minds.
Yeah.
And I agree, to be
Mhm.
quite honest,
Yeah.
Aquarius is an air sign, all this stuff's, I know age of Aquarius, and signs are different, but we've got all this stuff moving into Aquarius. And um, I also see, because being a Sagittarius myself, very I've got so much in Sagittarius, and all the progress stuff's moved into Aquarius. I feel there's kind of similarities for seeing the truth and pulling pieces together and things like that. With this being coming in, this three-eye atlas from Sagittarius A near the galactic center, and then coming closest to Earth on the Sagittarius new moon, and then leaving our solar system past Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius. I think new truth, new knowledge, higher knowledge is coming in. So I think new higher consciousness. And I'll give you a phrase one of my main teacher gave me about Pluto. You'll probably love it because you kind of referred to it there, that Pluto takes away what you thought was your power and leaves you with what is truly your power.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And she taught me that way
Yeah.
before all of this started kicking off. You know?
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I think Pluto's so feared, right? And I think Pluto encourages us to look at the shadow within and without, and then find the inner gold in many ways, right?
right. And I think we fear our own power, right? We fear
Mm-hmm.
to realize that
Mm-hmm.
the leaders, what they're doing is a projection of our disempowerment. And
Mm,
as we claim our power, I mean, it's a very intense, scary thing to like go go through the Pluto transit that brings us to our knees, but then
mm-hmm.
gives us our our empowerment. Yeah. And
Definitely.
yeah, your teacher said it so succinctly. Yeah.
And collectively, I keep trying to express this in all my videos and things as well, that this is happening within and without. This is, collectively the people gathering to claim their power. Um, I so I was listening to Rosie's 2026 ahead video, ready for this call, and you were talking about the upcoming Venus retrograde later this year, right? And so I've been tracking Venus and Pluto and Ceres, which I just wrote a book on, since they were all conjunct at zero Aquarius on December the 7th, 24, which is before I discovered your book. The three met at zero Aquarius, and the three met at zero Aries in March of 1823. I think the date was. I may have forgotten that exactly. But this Venus retrograde is really interesting too, right? Coming up, because Venus turns retrograde on this justice point, to go back to your justice point thing. And at the same time, Pluto will be back at 3 degrees Aquarius and out of bounds again. Is it out of bounds when?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll be out of bounds when the whole time Venus is retrograde.
Yeah. So there they are working together again. Venus kind of
Yeah.
values, relationships, creative. I often see Venus with manifestation, you want to call it. It may be, yeah. And Pluto, of course, is about desire as well, earthly desire. And so they're both about what you desire. So that's a real potent time. And so talk more about the justice point. Why did you call it that?
Yeah.
Why did you notice that? Yeah.
Uh, so when I started working with the cycle of Pluto, just Pluto, and
Mm,
looking at it historically, I wanted to come up with names for the four different stages, right?
mm,
And the first stage, when Pluto crosses the equatorial plane, 0 degrees, it was clear that it was visionaries. We're looking at
mm,
Aristotle and just Augustine of Hippo. Like it was clear, it was easy to see that these were all visionaries who were starting a movement.
mm,
Um, when Pluto, and then it was easy to see Pluto out of bounds to the north was about power. Um,
mhm,
and then Pluto out of bounds to the south, I worked with that a little bit, but reform kept coming up as a sort of a neutral, instead of saying revolution or something more inflammatory. I worked with the Reformation that happened precisely when Pluto was out of bounds to the south. So
mm,
reform felt like an easy word. But then there was the fourth point.
Mm,
And the fourth point was a mystery to me. I had to keep researching. And so I looked at all the events and people who lived during that time period. There was Benedict of Nursia, who was a big social justice activist. There was Savonarola, there was Jesus, there was Mani, there's people that were all crying for justice. They were kind of
mm,
the outliers, the cry, and I tried to work with other names because there's lots of other things that happen at that point. Like there's power structures really start shifting there.
mm,
There's a kind of underlying shadow work that happens in that, and that's natural for Scorpio anyway.
mm.
Um, but the word justice kept coming up, and I tried to take it out, and it just kept resurrecting. And when I talk to clients, and I've been working with these points for at least 10 years in my sessions, um, I find that when I tell somebody that when they have something around between 4 and 14 degrees of Scorpio and talk about social justice work, it it tends to be like not just I'm into social justice, but this
Mhm.
is my life work. It works so well. One of the interesting things about Pluto's cycle when it's at 0 degrees declination or out of bounds is it correlates with Neptune at 0 degrees Aries.
Oh, I'll
And
tell you my placements in Scorpio in a minute. So, yeah. Yeah.
Um, so Neptune's at 0 degrees
Mm,
Aries. Whenever Pluto's, not whenever, but when Neptune is at 0 degrees Aries,
mm,
Pluto is either out of bounds or at the vision point, but it skips the justice point. So I feel
mm,
like there's some kind of underlying mystery to that point. Um,
mm,
and I think the 1980s Pluto was there. Now, I
mm,
also realize it's a very big leap to say that here's Pluto at these points, and now we're going to bring in the other planets at these
mm,
points. Um, and I do have a book coming out soon, probably in about 2 months.
mm,
It's in the design phase
mm,
that talks about working with planets at, you know, particularly between 4 and 14 degrees of the
mm,
fixed signs,
mm,
and looking at these four major archetypes of the visionary, the warrior,
mm,
the healer, justice activist, and the teacher that Angela Sarian kind of talks about.
mm.
And
Oh,
working with any of the
I love
inner
her too.
planets.
Yeah.
And working with any of the other planets, Venus, Jupiter, Mars,
Mm,
at those points. And then I collected a database of about 1,500 different people and looked at them and
mm,
just also found correlations there.
mm,
So I do find that extraordinary events do happen when other planets are at those
mm.
points, which is why I think added to what's going on in August is that Jupiter will be between 4 and 14 degrees of Leo.
Yeah.
And that will expand the hubris.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
Which
Yeah.
is already happening, but that can also help us to, that kind of uprising to kind of
Mm,
ensue after that.
yeah. But also, there's Jupiter's connection to Three Eye Atlas there too, I feel.
Oh,
But
tell me
so,
what that is. Oh, because of the Sagittarius connection.
yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it's kind of changing Jupiter Sagittarius, what we understand about it a little bit. But that's my flights of intuitive fancy. But I have my midheaven is 6 Scorpio, my Venus is 7, and my Neptune is 8 Scorpio.
Beautiful.
And by the way, also my South Node is 0 Aries. So I'm getting all of these things. I kind of feel like, all that you're saying about the social justice, I feel like my social justice has led to this point of talking about these things on these videos and trying to inspire people to, kind of step into their power, if you like. So you've
Which takes
spoken
a lot of
to,
courage.
well, yeah, because I'm an immigrant too. So, and he's talked about denaturalizing citizens and things, but whatever, I'll live either way. So, this Mercury, I think the Venus retrograde period in well, it begins October the 3rd. Venus stations retrograde at the justice point. Interestingly, Mercury will be conjunct Haumea at that time and square Pluto. They will all be at 3 degrees. Mercury, Haumea. Mercury will be at 3 Scorpio, square Pluto. And so they're all talking to each other again. And Mercury and Venus went retrograde together in March of 25 from Aries to Pisces. And now it's happening pretty much again, not quite as exact degrees, but now Pluto is directly involved by these squares, right? So, and Pluto's out of bounds again. So this is, I will be getting that book about these fixed signs, because that just makes total sense to me. We can't all research the same things, thank heavens. I try. You seem more focused than I do.
I have my particular areas.
Yeah, I go
Um,
off on everything. So I just interview people about their stuff so I can find out more too. So yeah, but I'll be getting the book.
but and I think that Venus retrograde is kind of the perfect. I love that you're
Mm,
connecting Venus to Persephone. It's
mm,
talk about like the drama of Venus coming out of the underworld to
mm,
um uh, and her empowerment to meet Pluto. Like
mhm.
what a beautiful kind of synchronicity of those of Pluto being out of bounds, which is
Yeah.
Persephone rising into her power.
Mhm.
With Venus retrograde, we know that when planets are retrograde, they're brighter, they're more powerful, they're more, it's like time to bow down, the 42 days of Venus retrograde.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, in Scorpio, I think it goes back
Mhm.
into Libra and like hangs out at Arcturus, right? So that's like
Mhm.
this cool connection that she's magic
Mhm.
in that time and allowing us to kind of also look at the shadow and so that these uprisings that are bound to happen can
Mhm.
be can be creative, can be filled with art, can be filled with
Mhm.
music, can be filled with a different quality than we've seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been drawn to be talking about that more as well. That nothing. I'm not trying to criticize people that go on the marches or whatever, but they're intermittent. We need sustained kind of creative uprising, I think, in this time to work with this energy. And so all of this is kind of coming together. And of course, Scorpio, Pluto is, the modern, I don't like the word ruler, but use it anyway, the modern ruler of Scorpio. So they're all speaking to each other. So,
Yeah.
it's like, so to my mind, this is leading to a point of major reunification of, mind, body, spirit, if you like. And you've talked to it a little bit with the everybody doing different kinds of therapy. There's internal family systems. I'm sure you could name lots of kind of practices that people are doing more and more. I'm a shamanic practitioner. More people are doing that now, you know? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also this awareness that keeps coming across my plate, maybe because I'm in the Northwest, is the
Mm.
connection to the fungi, what we're learning about
Mm.
our our interconnectedness through working
Mm.
with mushrooms and
Mm-hmm.
psychedelic or not. We're learning kind of so much about how the fungi and how we're all interconnected um,
Mm-hmm.
through the kind of mirror that the fungi is and the lichen is
Mm.
the kind of. So I think
Yeah.
there's kind of the earth kind of magic that's happening as well.
Oh, there is definitely. I've looked into that a lot as well, and Paul Stamets, I follow him, and apparently, humans have quite a lot of DNA in common with mushrooms and fungi. So
Yeah.
there's that too. All of these things are coming together, And I'm trying. I feel like I'm talking more than you because I'm so excited by the fact you're kind of discovering or feeling very similar things that I think all tie together. Really, we all kind of bring our part to it, but on a more mundane level for the listeners, that Venus retrograde in October is the Venus star point return for the USA. So the prenatal Venus star point for the USA in 7076 chart is 1 Scorpio, and this Scorpio star point where the Sun and Venus move is at 0 Scorpio, and it's the last Scorpio Venus star point in over 100 years because they always move backwards through the signs. So they
Yeah.
move into Libra after that. So
Yeah, and I don't know much about the star point. You just
Mm,
actually I'm just learning
mm.
about it for the first time, if I'm being honest. But I'm
Well,
thinking
we
the
can't
whole
learn everything, Rosie. I learn something new every day with astrology, right? Anyway, go on. Yeah.
I think this relates to the magic of Venus as it's hidden, particularly during the Venus
Mm,
retrograde time period, and it shifts from
mm,
evening to morning star.
mm,
And I mean that happens every other year, right? We go through, but to have it be connecting to the Venus connection to the
mhm,
major empire in the world right now, that if we're falling, this is going to change all the power dynamics in the world, right?
mhm,
Um, uh, and and to really, I think, really work with our spiritual practices during that time
mm,
period.
mm,
Um, I think getting ready for that time can be really helpful, particularly April, May, June, when things
mm.
are moving a little bit more forward and we're not in eclipses.
Yeah.
Uh, but I love like presencing the magic of that time period, and
Mm,
anytime Venus is retrograde.
mm.
But it makes sense that it would be related to the US's chart because
It does. Yeah.
uh, the US is, I just did another talk that's total Vedic. I'm kind of just did this great Vedic conference.
Mm,
But there's the time period that the US is moving into is Rahu Ketu, which
mm,
is the north-south node time period, which is such an extraordinary time period in the life of an organization or in our personal lives. It's a
mm.
spiritual breakthrough time period that really begins this year. Now I'm forgetting the exact dates, but
Mhm.
this year we're moving into that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that
that would
that
be
kind of
would
relates.
in the tropical zodiac. Would that be when the nodes move back into Aquarius and Leo, or roughly related? Or sorry, didn't mean to
Um,
interrupt.
no, it's not
No,
related to that.
no. Okay.
Related to the Dasha system. Um,
Mm,
yeah, related to the Dasha
mm,
sequence, which is separate.
mm,
Um, but that's, another thing, watching the nodal shifts
mm,
and the nodal aspects that are happening this year are significant, I think, as well.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, I need to learn more about the Dasher system, but sometimes you don't have enough time in the day,
yeah,
right,
no,
to learn
Vedic
all
is a
these
whole
things.
different thing,
Oh,
right?
I know. I keep dabbling in it, and I'm like,
Yeah, I did that for years. I was like, no, no, way too much. And then it just took over.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, it might do. Well, I'm on Rosie's Substack, and I just saw you did a new article about a Vedic perspective or something, right? So,
yeah, I looked at the
yeah,
USA chart and the Vedic
mm,
astrology for the year.
yeah,
Yeah, we were, I think the one thing that people can be caught up in that I'm not getting caught up in because of doing the
mm,
research that I've done is
mm,
fear that we are moving into empire building.
mm,
I'm 100% certain there is going to be an uprising of some
mm,
kind. And that this current leaders of our country is not going to continue in this
mm.
fashion, that this is on a collision course. Um, and
I'm with you. I've been saying it. So you see, listeners, I've been saying this for so long. I'm like, they're hanging on by their fingernails,
yeah,
like you said.
Yeah.
And we're going to be okay. You know, this is, it seems like empire building, and yeah, it seems like the whole world order is
Mm.
collapsing. I just think it's shifting and changing. That's, yeah, and I
Mhm.
long said the US Constitution was likely to be rewritten.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Excellent.
clearly I'm not even from here, so, but you know, I can see the holes in it like a
Well,
glaring
maybe
sieve.
it's because you're not from here
Yeah.
and you didn't get the whole worship of the Constitution that we
Exactly. I don't. Yeah,
gave
you're
it
right.
to.
Yeah. And also I studied American history, politics, literature and film in college, so maybe I saw it from that outside perspective as well, but you know, it wasn't written for everybody, let's just face it. So
Yeah, it needs a rewrite.
yeah, it
At
does.
least it needs an energetic represencing, right? It needs something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean the ideals of it, the idea of it is wonderful, but you know, it just kind of left a lot out really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, we weren't included in it, right?
exactly, and even the structures of the government. I mean, how easily have they been able to come in and just like break it all, kind of thing? Like, you know, pretty much. Yeah. They always went on about, you know, balance of powers and checks and balances, but they were all kind of gentlemen's agreements. They were,
Exactly.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And I know people sometimes get a bit itchy with me when I criticize the Constitution and the founding fathers, but here we are. And
Well,
they were they were of their time, but anyway. Yeah.
I love the Ken Burns documentary because he's
Mm,
like, without, maybe directly criticizing, pointing
mm,
out like all the other things that kind of happened and their very
mm.
humanness in the process. I think it
Yeah.
gives us a little bit of permission. Yeah, they were humans, we're humans.
Mm,
There's a billion people on
mm.
the planet right now, that
Yeah.
also have done some very deep spiritual work. I think that is,
Mm.
I think that combination that has come through. I mean, we think
I
about
think so.
just how extraordinary since 1860s
Mm.
this time has been. I've been also thinking about like this technology that's kind of a big
Oh
conversation.
yeah.
I
Hmm.
and and thinking about like where physics has come, and this is just
Hmm.
very general, but in the beginning we have Maxwell and the equations of electricity and magnetism, which all of our technology are based on.
Mm.
And then when we get to Pluto out of bounds to the north, that was Schrodinger and Heidegger and
Mm.
going, you know what? The observer makes a difference and things aren't what they
Mhm.
seem to be. And this whole, and it didn't, it's not mattering really until this moment. Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like those ideas were philosophies in a way.
They
We
were, but it's
have,
coming to being, and you know, we're realizing that, you know, everything is not empirical. The
right.
observer counts. Yeah. And even in astrology, I would say, you know, trying to say that, you know, astrology can be, and keeping on trying to prove that everything in astrology is empirical. I I'm sorry, it doesn't quite work for me because the cycles all slightly change each time.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
to go back to the Venus star point circle, I mentioned before we recorded that it has a 251-year cycle to Rosie, but
Yeah.
it moves back by minutes even over those 251 years. It has even greater cycles. So, you know, nothing is exactly the same. It's like, so we can guess when we do predictions, but I think it's more about the energy. I don't think you're kind of saying exactly what the revolution is going to look like, or I think you approach it more like I do. You know it's going to come, but it's it's going to be different to before.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, one of the teachers at the conference said that astrology and the Vedic astrologers have like a vast body of knowledge that
Oh.
is has been sustained over time, where I think Western
Mm,
astrologers were having to do all this research to
mm,
recreate because of the Middle Ages and that witch burning time and the
yes.
illusion of our knowledge that happened. But he said that astrology is 25% technique, 25% intuition, and 50% kind of grace.
Yes. Oh, that makes sense. Who said that? I should get.
Oh, I wish it was
Oh,
B.B.
somebody at the
Rahman's
conference. Yes.
son. It was B.B.
Yeah.
Rahman's son, and I can't remember his name.
No, no, never mind. It doesn't really matter. But it makes sense, complete sense to me. So, maybe I need to go and watch some of that stuff. But I do think, I mean, there are some astrologers are starting to mix Vedic and Western, right? So, hmm yeah. hmm
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have this deep knowledge that you're working with the star points, and yeah.
Well, yeah, I try to learn it all, but we can't. And so do you, but you've got such deep knowledge too of other things that I don't. But that's kind of what I meant, that I kind of feel like astrologers that um work in our way, and start to bring in just different things and see it from different perspectives. Because to go back to the observer counts, I think I think we need to kind of merge things a little. I'm actually going to be joining the Venus research group with NCGR, but I
Mm,
want to research. Astrologer Mark Jones did a book on planetary nodes,
yeah.
and there's a great connection with planetary nodes and the Venus star points that's worth researching, I think. And I know there's something there. So, yeah. And they're kind of I see them as kind of the wave energy underneath um, the empirical planetary cycles, if you like. So, and obviously Pluto's south nodes are in Capricorn, south nodes in Capricorn, north node in Cancer, right? So they've
Yeah,
been activated right now. So, and the
yeah.
nodes are connected to the outer bounds, I believe, too, from what I understand of all in some way.
There's correlation, yeah.
Yeah. hmm To the cycle. So, well, I'm really excited to have talked to you, but tell us when this new book's likely to be out and where people can get it.
Um, I'd like to get it out sooner, but I kind of have a feeling my ascendant is 0 degrees Aries, so I think it's
Oh,
going to come out after Saturn and Neptune get into
mm,
Aries, which will be end of February, beginning of March, probably around that time period.
oh
And
yeah.
it's called Finding Your Role in the Awakening.
Mm,
And it will be through my website. I'm going to self-publish this book, and so
yeah.
it'll probably be on Amazon and different places. But my
Mm,
website is rosiefin.com.
mm. I
And
will put all those below in the
yeah,
description, yeah, for everybody. But
yeah,
I will definitely be getting that book, and maybe you'll come back on again, kind of after,
that would be
after
lovely.
the book's out, and
Absolutely.
after, because I just think the more we pull these things, and the more of us that
Mhm.
see that the times are changing for the better, really, ultimately.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the better, because it just inspires other people to take action and rise up and be empowered. So, any last words from you, Rosie? And,
Just gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for doing the work you're doing, and
thank
thank
you too.
all the listeners.
Yeah, and for anybody who's interested at all, astrologers or not, to be honest, just the historical data in this and the cycles is it's just an astounding book. And it's because of the way I work, I kind of have to keep going in and out of bits. And I've just seen that Rick Levine's on there, and of course Mr. Quantum himself. So I think we're
Yeah,
moving into a quantum astrology age. There you go.
yeah, yeah.
hmm hmm
Yeah, he and I talked about it back in 2009. He was like, "You need to get this out."
you're
That's
you're you're more patient than me. I kind of rushed my series book out, and now I want to do a second edition, but that's okay. I
Let-
probably will. So, anyway, well, everybody, I hope you really enjoyed
yeah,
this. Please go check out Rosie's website, check out her Substack, check out the book.
please.
She's doing some really great work in the world. So thanks, Rosie.
Thank you.